Hey guys. Tonight we begin with the rise of a man you were never meant to admire. Not a disciple, not a doubter, a hunter. He didn't carry a cross, he carried warrants, letters signed by priests. Authority in one hand, rage in the other. He kicked in doors, dragged mothers from their homes, watched men bleed, and called it holy. He was the fear in the early church's prayers, the shadow in the alley, the name that made believers go silent. And then, one afternoon on the road to Damascus, the God he thought he was defending spoke his name, and everything broke. This is the story of how a murderer became a missionary, how the most feared man in the movement became its loudest voice. This is what happened to the man who hunted Christians before he met God. So, before you get too cozy, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. And drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. The port city stinks of salt, sweat, and saffron. You are born under a high roof lined with cedar beams, into a house where no one forgets where they came from. Your father insists your first word is not Abba but Adonai. Your mother wraps you in cloth stitched with verses. The neighbors call you by your Roman name, Paulus, little one, but your mother hisses when they say it. She calls you Shaul. She says your name means asked for, chosen. She says God named kings like this. You are not meant for ordinary life. The streets of Tarsus fill your nose with every kind of smoke, Greek perfumes, burning oil, and the soot from Roman ships anchored down the river. You learn the difference between people by their sandals, their accents, the gods on their coins. At night, your father lights a lamp and recites the Shema over your bed. You repeat it until it becomes part of your breath. By the time you are 6, you can recite 3 of the 5 books of Moses. By 8, you can quote sections of the prophets. You do not understand all the words, but you know they are heavy and sacred. You speak them the way a soldier sharpens a blade. Your father's friends are Pharisees. They wear long robes and carry long arguments. They do not smile easily. When they speak, you listen. When they ask questions, you panic if you don't know the answer. Once, you give the wrong interpretation of a passage in Exodus. Your father does not hit you, but he says nothing for the rest of the night. The silence feels like death. The next morning, you memorize the whole chapter before he wakes. You do not play with the Gentile children. You do not eat their food. You hear them whisper things about your people. Greedy, stiff-necked, strange. You do not understand yet, but something tightens in your chest every time you pass their markets. When you are older, you will call it zeal, but right now it feels like shame with no place to go. At synagogue, the men argue about Rome, about the temple, about the promises of God. Some say the Messiah will come soon. Some say he already has. You do not understand why they speak in riddles. You ask your father if God has forgotten Israel. He looks at you for a long time and says, "No, but he has not forgiven us either." When you are 10, a Greek teacher is hired to teach you rhetoric. You learn how to shape words into weapons. You read Homer and Aristotle in the morning and Leviticus at night. You learn to speak like a Greek, argue like a Jew, and obey like a Roman. The contradictions do not bother you yet. You are too proud, too hungry. By 12, you fast twice a week. You've begun asking questions your tutors cannot answer. Your father watches with a mix of pride and suspicion. One night, he tells you he is sending you to Jerusalem, to study under Gamaliel, to become a true scholar of Torah. You nod solemnly, but inside you burn. You are not going to study. You are going to become a weapon. You do not cry when your mother kisses your forehead goodbye. You do not wave when the caravan departs. You clutch your scrolls and whisper the psalms into the wind. Your feet leave footprints in the dust, but your mind is already in the temple. You are Shaul of Tarsus, Roman by birth, Jew by blood, scholar by training, warrior by conviction. You do not yet know the name of the man you will come to hate, and you have no idea how far God is willing to go to reach you. You learn early that Tarsus is not made for simple minds. The city doesn't whisper. It shouts, chants, clatters. Roman soldiers march in pairs with iron soles that scrape like knives against the limestone. They never look down. They never look twice. You are small enough to hide behind your father's cloak when they pass, but you always peek out. You stare at the way their armor glints like hammered glass, the way people move out of their way before they say a word. You memorize their silence. You mistake it for strength. On the same street, not far behind, Greek philosophers gather on steps carved smooth by argument and sandals. Their voices rise and fall like sea tide. You don't understand their words yet, but their hands dance when they speak. They sound like they love their own voices. You think they are foolish, but you also think they are free. Your father calls them empty, calls their reason a cage made of air. He tells you the only wisdom worth having is from God, and everything else is noise. You believe him. But something about the way the Greeks laugh, their shamelessness, it makes you wonder if ignorance could ever feel like peace. You are taught that your soul is not your own, that you are part of a covenant older than empires, that obedience is the only path to honor. So you recite Torah before you can properly write your name. You mouth syllables you do not yet understand, trusting they will shape you if you say them long enough. And they do. Every verse burrows deeper than hunger. Every law becomes a brick in your bones. You are circumcised on the 8th day. You are taught to bless your food before you taste it, taught to wash your hands after touching the world. You are taught to draw lines between holy and common. But the city never obeys those lines. The city laughs at them. It shoves Gentiles against your shoulders in the street. It coats your sandals in wine, blood, sweat, and olive oil. It forces you to decide, every day, how much of it will enter you. Your mother whispers prayers into your ears before bed. She tells you God counts every hair on your head. Your father checks your memory of the law after breakfast. He corrects you without raising his voice, which makes the shame worse. You learn to hide your mistakes in silence. You learn to rehearse answers before questions are even asked. You do not want to be a disappointment. You want to be fire. Some nights you sneak down to the river. You watch the traders unload spices from boats. You hear sailors curse in Egyptian and Latin. You see women with painted eyes and men who drink until they forget their names. You watch it all without blinking. You feel disgust. You feel curiosity. You feel the edge of something sharp inside you that doesn't have a name yet. By the time you are 8, you can recognize dialects by their vowels. You know how to navigate a crowded street without touching a single unclean thing. You can tell by the jewelry on a man's wrist whether he fears God or mocks him. You walk fast. You look down. You speak only when spoken to. But in your heart, you are collecting things. Bits of empire, fragments of logic, scraps of power. You are building a mind that can cross boundaries, a mouth that can argue with governors and fishermen alike. You do not smile easily. You are already dangerous. Tarsus does not belong to you, but it made you, and it will never leave you alone. The other boys throw stones at fig trees and laugh when they miss. You sit in the shade with a scroll on your lap, tracing every letter with your finger until your knuckles go white. You are not scolded into this. You choose it. The stories feel like fire, dry, crackling, ancient. You don't know what all the words mean, but you can feel the weight of them pressing into your chest like a fist. You are not trying to impress anyone. You are trying to be clean. Your mother says your mind is a blessing. She says you are a vessel, that you were born with a sharpness God can use. You try to believe her, but most days it feels like pressure more than purpose. There is always more to learn. Another law, another verse, another way to fail. You learn early that there are 613 commands in the Torah. You learn later that even one broken is enough to make you guilty of all. That truth stays lodged in your ribs like a stone you can't swallow. Other boys play in the dust until their tunics are stained red and brown. You are not allowed to join them. Not because your parents forbid it, but because you no longer know how. Their joy is loud, loose, unguarded. It makes you uncomfortable. You feel older than them. You feel hollow beside them. You return to your corner, your scroll, your law. It doesn't laugh back, but it listens. You start reciting Leviticus before your voice changes. You memorize it, line by line, not because you enjoy it, but because you must. It is full of blood and precision, sacrifices, measurements, skin conditions. You do not skip the hard parts. You copy them carefully onto wax tablets, your fingers aching with each repetition. Burnt offering, guilt offering, wave offering. You begin to dream in categories: clean, unclean, holy, profane. Your father brings you before older men and lets them test you. They ask you what the high priest must do if he sins unintentionally. You answer before they finish the question. They smile. You do not. You feel only relief that you didn't fail, that you didn't shame your name, that the room didn't go silent again. You begin to enjoy the arguments. You like how debate sharpens your thoughts, how it lets you press your mind against another until sparks fly. You quote rabbis you've never met. You cite cross-references no one taught you. You do not shout. You do not laugh. You let the text speak. When they call you a prodigy, you feel nothing. You already know you were meant for more than this. At night, your mother rubs your back with oil and sings low into your spine. She says God watches you when you sleep, that he counts your breaths, that even your silence is a prayer. You believe her, but not like a child. You believe her like someone already afraid of being weighed and found wanting. You begin fasting, even when no one tells you to. You avoid meat during the week, avoid crowds altogether. You spend entire afternoons reviewing the same chapter until you can quote it backwards. When the other boys throw stones, you calculate which ones would be clean enough for temple use. You do not say it out loud. Sometimes you worry your heart is too hard, that your obedience is more fear than love. You hear people speak of joy, and you nod, but it feels like a rumor from another world. You do not know if God is near or far. You only know he is watching. So you try harder, and harder still. One morning you wake before the sun and begin the laws of purification for mildew. The words burn into your skull like brands. You are 12. You already know what it is to be exhausted by holiness. You tell yourself, this is what love must feel like. Heavy, demanding, unflinching. And you do not stop. The morning you leave, the air smells like olives and dust. Your mother packs dates in a cloth pouch and places it beside your scrolls. She smooths your hair with hands that tremble only after they leave your head. She does not cry. Neither do you. Her eyes search your face for something, maybe doubt, maybe fear, but you give her nothing. You are 12, nearly 13. Too old for tears, old enough to carry the law like a sword. Your father does not walk you to the road. He says a short blessing over your shoulders the night before, then turns away. You think maybe he doesn't want to watch you leave. Or maybe he knows what happens to boys who go to Jerusalem and never quite come back. Either way, you do not ask for more. You tell yourself his silence is approval. You walk with traders headed toward the city. They speak of coin and crops, of road thieves and Roman taxes. You keep to yourself. You repeat Deuteronomy under your breath, each word forming like a stone in your mouth. You picture Jerusalem the way it's described in the Psalms. gates of praise, walls of righteousness, the city of the great king. You tell yourself you are going home, even though you've never been there before. The journey takes days. The path grows steeper, narrower. You sleep on hard ground, your back against your bag, your eyes wide open to the stars. You listen for jackals and the rustle of movement in the trees. But mostly you listen to your thoughts. You imagine the halls of study, the scrolls lined up like soldiers, the elders with beards like waterfalls. You imagine becoming one of them. When you finally see the city, it doesn't rise like a dream. It looms. Smoke curls from rooftops. Market cries echo down stone corridors. Pilgrims weep at gates. Children beg. The air feels heavier here, like the presence of God presses against every wall and brick. You step through the gates and feel yourself vanish into something older than memory. They send you to the school of Gamaliel. His name is already legend. They say he has the gentleness of Hillel and the sharpness of Shammai. You are told not to speak unless asked. You are told to listen. But you already knew that. You've spent years doing nothing else. Your room is bare. Just a mat, a jug of water, and a view of nothing but more stone. You do not complain. You arrange your scrolls along the wall like icons. You kneel. You whisper the Shema until your lips go numb. You do not ask God for help. You assume if you work hard enough, He won't have to. The other students are older. Some are kind, others competitive. You note which ones speak with borrowed wisdom and which ones have wrestled the text until it bled. You envy no one. You fear no one. You are not here to make friends. You are here to become steel. You meet Gamaliel after your first week. He studies your face without smiling. His voice is low but steady, like water over stone. He asks what you've learned. You recite Leviticus without faltering. He nods. Then he asks what it means. You give the answer you've memorized. He waits, then asks again what it means. This time, you do not answer. He tells you to come back when you're ready to wrestle, not just repeat. Then he walks away. You stay standing long after he's gone. Something in you splits, not in anger, but in hunger. You go back to your mat and reread everything. You look for the cracks in your own certainty. You are still sharp, but now you want to understand the edge. You don't realize it yet, but you are being unraveled. And one day, everything you're building here will be torn apart. Not by argument, not by failure, by mercy. Gamaliel teaches with his hands open. He walks slowly when he speaks, as if he's letting the words find their own way. He quotes Torah like it's a song, and waits for the silence between the lines to speak just as loud. He tells stories, not just rulings. He smiles when students get things wrong. He calls mercy the deepest logic of God. You listen, but you do not follow. You admire him. You do not imitate him. You sit at the front, always. You arrive before the lamps are lit. You stay after the courtyard is empty. You copy every word he says, but not the tone, not the rhythm. You strip the teachings for bone and leave the flesh behind. While others ponder, you calculate. While they discuss, you disassemble. You carry the law like a dagger hidden beneath your robe. The other students begin to notice. When you speak, they stop, not out of reverence, out of wariness. You do not ask questions unless you already know the answer. You do not offer thoughts unless they are precise. There is no room in you for wondering aloud. Only certainty, only conquest. Gamaliel calls the law a tree. You call it a hammer. He says the law bends toward restoration. You look for ways to catch others in error. You start to notice when prayers are recited carelessly, when hands aren't washed at the right times, when a phrase is paraphrased instead of quoted. You say nothing, but you keep a list in your mind. One day, a student suggests that perhaps some Gentiles are drawn by God even if they haven't been circumcised. He says it gently, with fear. You shut him down before he finishes the sentence. You list 5 scriptures, 6 rabbinic rulings, and a parable you twist to your favor. The room goes quiet. Gamaliel raises his hand, says nothing, just a gesture to release the tension. But the student never speaks again. You feel proud. At night, you replay arguments in your head. You imagine yourself on trial, defending the Torah before kings. You do not picture yourself weeping or kneeling. You picture yourself standing, unmoved, a voice that splits rooms in half. You begin fasting more than is required, not for repentance, for clarity, for edge. You walk the alleys of Jerusalem and recite the law under your breath, like a weapon being sharpened. You memorize texts so deeply that you start dreaming in commentary. Your mind is a forge. Every verse you touch, you turn into steel. One evening, Gamaliel walks with you after study. He tells you that zeal without love is a fire that burns its owner. You nod. You say nothing. Inside, you tell yourself he's grown soft. That age has made him sentimental. That perhaps even the great ones eventually forget what war the world is. But something in his voice stays with you. Not the words, the ache behind them. He teaches compassion, but you choose control. His eyes are soft, yours are sharp. He says the law is alive. You treat it like a sword. And even the other students, brilliant, bold, confident, they all begin to step aside when you walk past. You think it's respect, but part of you knows it's fear, and you like it. You start fasting on the 5th day of the week, just to make sure you aren't becoming soft. You stop eating bread, unless it's torn from the Sabbath table. You sleep less, talk less. You learn to live off ritual and argument, like a man training for war. You no longer pray for understanding. You pray for accuracy, for clarity, for the kind of conviction that silences rooms. Every conversation is a test, every question a trap. You no longer argue to learn. You argue to win. You interrupt rabbis. You correct elders mid-sentence. You bring references no one else has thought to memorize, dragging rulings from the oral law like arrows from a quiver. You don't care if your tone bruises. Truth is not fragile, and neither are you. You walk the temple steps like they belong to you. You spot heresy like a soldier spots ambush. You hear whispers of new sects, messianics, mystics, Essenes trying to rewrite heaven with symbols and dreams. You scoff at all of it. You call it dust. You call it rot. You say aloud what others only think. If God gave us the law, He gave us the right to defend it. You begin writing letters, challenges, rebukes. You draft lists of forbidden ideas and distribute them like edicts. A few students push back. You dismantle them in front of the entire school. They do not return. You stop keeping track of how many you've driven out. You stop pretending it bothers you. Gamaliel watches from a distance now. He no longer walks with you after study. He corrects you less. Sometimes you wish he would, just to prove he hasn't given up. But he only offers gentle words when you pass. Peace to you, Shaul. You nod, but you feel the sting in it. You feel the space between who you were and who you are becoming. And you press forward anyway. You begin visiting synagogues outside the city. You teach. You correct. You speak with fire. You call the people back to Torah with such force that some weep and others run. They say you have the authority of Elijah. You don't correct them. You start to believe it yourself. One night, an elder tries to soften your tone. He says gentleness is a fruit of the Spirit. You ask him if the Spirit excuses error. You ask if the prophets were gentle, if Moses spared the idolaters, if Phinehas was too sharp when he drove his spear through the lawbreakers. The elder does not answer. He does not return. You become the hammer. Every debate becomes a battlefield, every gathering a proving ground. You do not lose. You do not hesitate. You do not make room for what is not written. You start calling heresy by name. You start naming names. And still, you fast. You pray with clenched fists. You recite the curses of Deuteronomy as warnings, not lamentations. The temple is your arena. The scrolls are your weapons. You are not seeking wisdom anymore. You are enforcing it. Some of the older Pharisees speak about balance, about mercy, about the kindness of God. You call them soft. You think they've forgotten Sinai, forgotten the trembling, forgotten the fire. You haven't. You are the zealot no one dares challenge. And every false teacher you crush feels like another offering placed on the altar. Burnt. Accepted. At first, he's just another name muttered in the market. Another Galilean stirring up trouble with parables and crowds. You hear whispers. Yeshua of Nazareth. He preaches in riddles. He heals with spit. Some say he eats with sinners. Others say he speaks to demons. You dismiss it. Judea is full of men like this. Wanderers with wide eyes and dust on their feet, pretending their voices echo from heaven. They burn out fast. The Sanhedrin swats them down like flies. Then they say he was crucified. You pause. Not because you care, but because crucifixion is Rome's exclamation mark. When a man hangs like that, stripped, nailed, bleeding in the sun, it means he was loud enough to be feared. The crowd is already splitting in their stories. Some say he claimed to be the Son of God. Some say he predicted his death. Some say he forgave the ones killing him while he was still gasping for air. You shake your head. Madness. Heresy. You thank God for the law, for clarity, for a world where truth is carved in stone, not shouted from hillsides. But then you hear the next part. They say he rose, that the tomb is empty, that women, unclean, untrusted witnesses by every legal standard, have seen him walking, talking, glowing like Moses on Sinai. You scoff. You try to. But something in your stomach shifts. They say the veil tore. The curtain of the temple, 40 cubits high, thick enough to strangle a man, split in two from top to bottom the moment he died. Not cut, not weathered, torn. As if heaven itself reached down and opened the inner room, as if something sacred was leaving or entering. You ask the priests. Most avoid the question. Some say it was coincidence. Some say it was earthquake. But none look you in the eye. You begin collecting their names. These so-called followers. They call themselves the Way. You call them the Disease. You find their gatherings, their hymns, their prayers whispered in doorways and alleys. They speak of him like he still walks the streets, like he eats with them, like he breathes. You do not see hope in them. You see rebellion. You see a threat to everything sacred, a threat to Torah, to order, to God's name itself. You read Isaiah again, just to be sure. You trace every prophecy, every line. The Messiah is supposed to conquer, not die. He is supposed to bring justice, not hang between thieves. He is supposed to restore the throne of David, not get dragged outside the city and left to rot. This man, this Jesus, is a blasphemer, a curse, and now they call him Christ. You stop sleeping. You start planning. You sharpen your memory and rehearse your case against them. You quote the law. You picture their faces, the way they smile when you threaten them, the way they speak of love like it can erase commandment, like it can bypass sacrifice. They say he rose. You say they lie. They say he is the temple. You say he was torn down. They say he's coming back. You say he never left the grave. But you can feel it. Something is shifting under your feet. A fault line cracking through the world you thought you knew. And even as you prepare to crush them, part of you already knows. This is not going away. You begin with the easy ones: tent makers, widows, street preachers with cracked sandals and cracked theology. You show up to their gatherings wearing the law like armor. You sit in the back with your arms folded, scroll tucked under your cloak, waiting for the moment they slip. And they always do. A word twisted, a verse misused, a doctrine built on emotion instead of truth. You stand, you speak, you silence. They don't argue back the way others do. They don't shout. They don't defend themselves with precision. Instead, they look at you like they already knew you'd come, like they've prayed for you. It makes your skin crawl. You quote Torah. You quote prophets. You build your case like a wall of stone, unshakable and cold. They nod. They smile. One of them, a man who smells like fish and speaks like thunder, thanks you for coming, says he hopes you'll return, says your passion reminds him of someone. You leave before he can explain what that means. The next meeting, you come earlier. You hide behind a merchant's stall and watch them greet each other. No one bows, no one boasts. They eat together without washing, without ritual. They embrace without rank. You wait for the blasphemy to begin, but all they do is sing. The songs are strange, not polished, not trained. They don't rhyme like psalms or chant like temple prayers, but there's something in them, something thick and old and defiant. You try to ignore the way your chest tightens when you hear it. When they speak, it's all him, Jesus, not Yeshua Bar Yosef, not the carpenter, not the heretic. They say Jesus Christ like it's one word, like it's the center of gravity. They tell stories of healings, of bread that multiplied, of dead girls sitting up like they'd just woken from a nap. They quote him like scripture. They cry when they say his name. You interrupt. You point to the scroll. You ask where their proof is, where their sacrifice is, where their holiness is. They say he is the proof. They say he is the sacrifice. They say he is the holiness. You argue. You win. Your logic is flawless. Your citations are perfect. You expose the contradictions in their testimonies. You call out the flaws in their theology. They should be humiliated. They should unravel under the weight of your arguments. But they don't. They thank you. They bless you. They offer you food. You hate how peaceful they are, how calm, how sure. You've spent your whole life carving clarity from stone. These people weep and pray like children and somehow know more than they should. You don't understand it. You don't want to understand it. You visit more gatherings. You record names. You build dossiers. You note who speaks and who listens. You track which households let them in. You collect witnesses, waiting for one of them to break and admit it's all a trick, a mass delusion, a fever dream built on grief and bad wine. None of them do. You see men give up wealth. You see women risk arrest. You see slaves kneel beside merchants and call each other brothers. You see joy where there should be fear. You see hope where there should be shame. And still, you keep showing up. Not because you believe, but because you're afraid you might start to. You start with a name, then another, then 10 more. You copy them onto parchment in tidy rows, sorted by region and affiliation. You mark which homes they meet in, which synagogues tolerate them, which trades they practice. You note who they speak to, who they pray with, who they love. You circle anyone who refuses to recant. Then you begin to map them. You take the back roads through Jerusalem like a spy and draw routes in the margins of your notebook. Arrows between neighborhoods, escape routes from roofs, alleyways where they whisper their prayers. You sketch their world from the outside, not because you want to enter it, but because you intend to burn it down. You go first to the temple leadership. You ask for letters, warrants, permission to cleanse. The high priest does not hesitate. You are their favorite kind of instrument. Zealous, learned, unstoppable. You are given full authority to interrogate, detain, expose. Your fists are now official. Your anger endorsed. You raid a home near the lower market. You kick down the door during their meal. You recite the charges as they scramble to hide the bread and wine. A woman clutches a child. A man stares at you with pity instead of fear. It makes your stomach twist. You slap the scroll against his chest and call it justice. The next morning you visit a synagogue where two elders were seen speaking about the Nazarene. You don't accuse them outright. You ask questions that corner. You quote laws until they contradict themselves. You watch the room turn cold. You leave with names and silence in your wake. You begin to gather a following. Not friends, not disciples, just men who share your appetite. They watch you work and nod. They write reports. They drag people from cellars and courtyards. You stop learning their names. You stop asking for details. It all blurs into a single cause. Purge the lie. You tear families apart. You separate husband from wife, child from mother, brother from brother. You listen to wails echo through holding cells and tell yourself it is holy noise, the pain of purification. You remember Korah's rebellion, how the earth opened its mouth. You imagine yourself as that ground, chosen to swallow the unfaithful. You feel righteous. You feel alive. You wake each morning with purpose. You sleep like a man who has done his duty. You do not dream. The rumors grow. People whisper your name with dread. Some leave the city before you reach them. Others wait, stubborn, speaking of forgiveness as they are dragged from their homes. You think they're fools. You think they're liars. You think maybe they know something you don't. But you do not slow down. You expand your reach. You prepare documents for Damascus. You are not content to sweep Jerusalem alone. This cancer must be cut from every limb. You want them afraid to gather. You want the memory of your footsteps to echo in their bones. And still, they sing. They sing in the dark. They sing after the lash. They sing when their eyes swell shut and their legs buckle under chains. You call it delusion. You call it defiance. But something about it makes you furious. Not because it threatens your logic, because it threatens your certainty. And so you press harder. You vow to end it. One by one. The crowd is already shouting by the time you arrive. Dust hangs in the air like smoke, stirred by sandals and fury. You push your way forward. Scroll still tucked beneath your arm, the words of the law still warm in your mouth. You are not here to gawk. You are here to witness justice, to make sure it's done correctly, to see the cancer cut clean. Stephen stands in the center of it all. No chains, no pleading. His hands are open. His eyes don't move. He looks up, not at the mob, not at the temple behind them, not even at you. Just up. Like he sees something the rest of you are too blind or too bitter to notice. You hate that. You hate the calm on his face. You hate that he's not begging. You hate how still he is while the world unravels around him. He speaks once more, loud enough to be heard over the rage. He says he sees the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God, not sitting, standing, present, defiant, watching. That word, Son of Man, burns through the crowd like oil over fire. You nod. That's the blasphemy. That's the moment. That's the reason. The first rock hits his shoulder. He stumbles. The next slams into his jaw. A tooth falls into the dirt. You've seen stonings before. You've read the protocol. 2 witnesses. No pity. The weight of judgment carried out by the community. But this one feels different. You're close enough to see the blood pool in the corner of his mouth. Close enough to hear him gasp. You expect him to curse. You want him to curse. It would confirm everything. It would justify the sentence. But instead, he prays. His voice is thick and broken and low, but the words come clear. Lord, Do not hold this sin against them. He says it while a stone crushes his ribs. He says it while his face turns red, then blue, then gray. He says it like he means it. He says it like he's talking to someone who's listening. You don't flinch. You don't shout. You just watch. You watch him crumple slowly, his knees folding before the rest of his body. You watch the men step back, breathless, covered in sweat and dust, staring at what they've done. Some mutter prayers. Some look at the sky. No one speaks to you. You walk to the body. You kneel and look down at his face. Still tilted upward. Still shining. You memorize it. Not because you want to, but because you can't help it. The way his jaw hung open like he died mid-sentence. The way his eyes never stopped searching the sky. The way your name fell from his lips like a plea. He called you by name. Not in fear. In hope. You stand. You gather your scroll. You nod to the others and walk away, slow and straight, like nothing touched you. But all night, you see his mouth moving. And you hear him say it again. Not a curse. Not a cry. A prayer. For you. You don't sleep after Stephen. You lie in your bed, eyes wide in the dark, lips moving through lines of Leviticus like a mantra, like a shield. You tell yourself he was a liar, a blasphemer. You remind yourself of the law, of the duty, of the danger. But his face keeps returning, not broken, not angry, not afraid, just bright, just still. You hate that it haunts you. You hate that it felt like peace. So you double down. You go to the high priest with the scroll already drafted. You don't wait to be summoned. You walk into the court like it belongs to you. You lay the parchment on the table and speak clearly, without stammer. You say the Nazarenes have fled. You say they've slipped through Jerusalem's cracks and scattered into other cities. You say the sickness is spreading, and that you know exactly how to stop it. You ask for Damascus. It's a trade hub, a hinge between regions. If it festers there, it will spread like wildfire. You tell them that if you can cut it off now, here, with precision, the whole movement will collapse under its own delusion. You ask for letters, sealed, official, irrevocable. The authority to enter synagogues, arrest anyone who speaks the name, drag them back in chains if necessary. You don't ask for permission. You ask for power, and they give it to you. The scrolls are signed without hesitation. The priests barely look at you. They know your record. They know your zeal. You are the hammer, and they are glad to put you to use. One nod, and you are loosed on the road like a weapon drawn from its sheath. You hold the letters in your hand as you walk back through the temple courtyard. You feel taller, sharper. You tell yourself this is what righteousness feels like. The silence of doubt replaced by the music of mission. A clean, clear goal. Crush the disease before it spreads. You begin preparations that same evening. You gather companions, young, strong, loyal. You study the route. You note the villages. You memorize names. You don't just want to catch the leaders. You want the hosts, the sympathizers, the soft ones who let falsehood curl around their tables and call it hospitality. You feel no fear. You feel something like joy, because this is what you were made for. You aren't some contemplative sage pondering mercy and paradox. You are a son of the law, a purifier, a defender of the holy. Every step toward Damascus feels like a return to purpose. The world is tilting back into place. You think of Stephen only once as you seal your pack. Not his voice, not his blood, just his face, the way he looked up, the way he said your name. You shake it off. You tell yourself that kind of peace is a lie. You tighten your straps, and you set your face like flint. The sun hangs overhead like a blade. The road shimmers ahead in long stretches of pale dust, marked only by hoofprints and shadows. You ride with your head covered and your eyes narrowed, scanning the horizon for the first glimpse of Damascus. You've gone over the plan 100 times. Where you'll enter, who you'll question first, which homes you'll strike before word can spread. The letters are tucked into your satchel, sealed and legal and heavy with authority. They feel righteous in your hands. You feel unstoppable. The men walking beside you are quiet. They've stopped asking questions. They follow you like soldiers, not friends. You like it that way. Clarity demands distance. Mercy breeds confusion. You are not here to console. You are here to clean. You mouth scripture under your breath as the city rises on the edge of the skyline. You sharpen your memory with psalms and curses and commandments. You think about Stephen again, but only briefly, only as fuel. His face, his voice, the absurdity of his last words. You let it harden you. You think of Damascus as a battlefield and yourself as the blade. Then the sky splits. It doesn't make a sound at first. Just a sudden weight of brightness, a burning you feel more in your teeth than in your eyes. The road vanishes, the men vanish. Everything collapses into colorless flame, and it presses down until your knees buckle and your thoughts dissolve. You hit the ground. Hard. You feel the dirt in your mouth. You taste copper. You try to stand, but your limbs betray you. The letters are somewhere nearby, crumpled and meaningless. And then the voice. Not thunder, not wind, not your own thoughts disguised as divine. A voice that comes from everywhere and nowhere. Too loud to escape, too soft to resist. It knows your name. Shaul, Shaul, why are you persecuting me? You open your mouth, but the words don't form. Your throat locks, your chest shakes. You are not frightened. You are unmade. You manage to whisper, "Who are you, Lord?" The answer drops like stone into water. Simple, final. I am Jesus. That's all. Not the one you chase. Not the one you hate. Just the name. The name you've spit in arguments. The name you've erased from homes and scrolls. The name they sing in alleys after beatings. The name Stephen said with blood on his lips. I am Jesus. And in that moment, the world tilts. You feel your sight tear away, your breath collapse inward. The sun is gone. The road is gone. You are left in the dark with nothing but that voice ringing in your bones. You lie there, blind and breathless, while footsteps scramble around you. The men call your name. You can't answer. They lift you like a broken tool. You hear panic in their voices, but not in yours. You're not panicked. You're hollow. You're undone. You don't ask where you are. You don't ask where the light went. You don't ask what happens next. Because deep down, under the ache, under the blindness, under the dust, you already know. Nothing is the same again. They lead you by the elbow like a child. Your feet drag through sand you can't see. The road is a blur of sound now. Hooves, leather, whispers that vanish the second you try to catch them. They ask you questions, but you don't answer. You can't. Not because your mouth is broken, but because language no longer feels safe. Every word you once trusted has shattered. You hold your silence like a wound. Damascus doesn't welcome you. No one cheers for your arrival. You came with fire in your chest and scrolls in your hands. Now your hands tremble. Your chest feels hollow. The men who followed you now speak your name like a question. They place you in a stranger's house on Straight Street and shut the door quietly behind them. You sit. You do not stand. You do not move. 3 days. No food. No water. You do not know why you don't eat. You don't think it's penance. You're not that poetic. You just forget. You forget how to want anything. You forget what hunger feels like. The light that blinded you is gone, but it's still there, burned into the backs of your eyelids. Even in darkness you see it, a presence made of silence and weight. You lie awake at night and replay it. Shaul, Shaul, why are you persecuting me? Not, Them. Not my people. Not the church. Me. Every stone you threw, every door you kicked, every name you dragged into the streets. You thought it was devotion, discipline, the defense of truth. But it was always personal. It was always him. You remember Stephen's face. You remember the light in his eyes, the way he looked past the crowd, the way his lips moved through blood and bruises to say things no sane man should say. You remember the prayer. You remember your name in it. You wonder how long it will take for that to fade. You sit on the floor, knees drawn to your chest, and count your breaths to make sure you're still here. Sometimes you speak the Shema under your breath, not because you're sure, but because it's the only thing that hasn't changed. You hear footsteps outside the room. You tense. You wait. You hope it's not a believer come to retaliate. You think you deserve it. You wonder if they'd call it justice. You wouldn't argue. Sometimes you think the voice was a hallucination, a judgment, a punishment for your pride. But then you remember the way the light didn't burn. It revealed. The way the voice didn't condemn. It asked, like he wanted something from you, like he still does. You want to ask forgiveness, but you don't know how. Not from God. From people. From the ones whose names you wrote in lists, whose houses you desecrated, whose prayers you mocked. You don't know if a man like you can be unmade and still be called alive. You don't know if anyone wants what's left. The blindness isn't the worst part. It's the clarity. You see yourself now, and you're afraid. Not of death, of mercy. You wait in the dark, for something, for anything. For the next voice. The house is quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like judgment. You sit on a woven mat that smells of clay and oil, legs folded beneath you, hands resting limp in your lap. Your fingers twitch sometimes, reaching for a scroll that isn't there. The walls breathe with the weight of waiting. You can't see them, but you feel them closing in. You whisper prayers, the way a man whispers secrets he's not sure he believes anymore. Not loud enough to disturb the silence, not certain enough to rise above it. You say Adonai, you say Elohim, you say the names you were raised to speak with reverence. But they taste different now, like questions, like rope unraveling in your mouth. You count the hours by the sounds outside, hooves in the morning, laughter from a nearby courtyard, a rooster's call just before dusk. You never leave your corner. You barely move. When someone brings you water, you thank them with a nod you hope lands in the right direction. When they bring food, you let it sit. You aren't fasting. You just don't know how to eat while your soul is still shaking. You tell yourself, this is what prophets must have felt like. Alone, blind, pressed down by the weight of revelation. But you're not a prophet. You're a man who broke things in the name of holiness, and only now realizes they weren't yours to break. You thought you served God. You thought your zeal was sacred. But now, in the stillness, you begin to wonder if all your righteousness was just hunger in disguise. You remember how you spoke, the sharpness, the certainty, the way people flinched when you entered the room, the way they stepped back like holiness might spill off you and stain them. You called it devotion, but now you wonder if it was just power, if it was just control dressed up in sacred language. No one here treats you like a threat. No one asks about your letters. No one reminds you who you were before the road swallowed you. They give you space. They wait. Even their mercy feels like a mirror. You try to remember his voice, the tone, the rhythm, the way he said your name, not with anger, but with ache. You've heard your name shouted in courts, whispered in prayers, chanted in the temple, but never like that. Never like someone who knew you better than you knew yourself. Shaul. You say it out loud sometimes, just to feel it land in the dark. You still don't know what he wants. You still don't know if this is judgment or invitation. But you know you're different now. The air feels different in your lungs. Your thoughts move slower, like they're walking on broken ground. The things you used to be sure of feel like strangers. The people you hunted feel like saints. You press your forehead to the wall and pray again. Not for answers, just to be heard. You don't ask to see again. You're not sure you deserve that. You just ask that, if he's still near, he doesn't leave. And you wait, in the dark, breathing, listening, undoing. You don't hear the knock right away. You're sitting with your back to the wall, head down, lips moving through a prayer that feels more like a confession. You've lost count of how many times you've asked for mercy, or silence, or both. When the knock finally comes, it doesn't sound like judgment. It sounds like interruption. You almost don't answer. Footsteps move toward you. Slow, certain. You tense, half expecting a Roman officer or a priest come to finish what the road started. The door creaks. Sandals shuffle across stone. You lift your face toward the sound, still blind, still waiting for consequence. But what you hear isn't accusation. You hear your name. Shaul. Not shouted, not sneered, just said, like a hand being held out. A voice speaks again, quieter this time. Brother. You feel it before you understand it. That word slides into a part of you still raw and aching, a part that didn't know it needed to be named. No one has called you that since before Damascus. Not with meaning, not with warmth. You flinch when he touches you, fingertips brushing the edge of your cheek, then resting on your forehead like a blessing. My name is Ananias, he says, and the Lord Jesus, who appeared to you on the road, has sent me, so that you may see again, and be filled with the Holy Spirit. You don't move. You don't speak. Your breath stutters, caught between shame and hope. And then it happens. You feel it first. A shift behind your eyes, a soft rupture. Something dry peels away from your vision like bark from a tree. It falls from your face in thin fragments, like ash, like scales, like pieces of yourself being let go. You blink, and light rushes in. Not bright, not blinding, just enough to shape the room. The corners, the outlines, a window half covered with cloth, the lines in Ananias's face, the kindness in his eyes. You see again. But the world is different now. It isn't smaller. It isn't safer. It's clearer. You don't see enemies anymore, or heretics, or threats. You see people, souls, the ones you tried to break, the ones who prayed for you anyway. You try to speak, but your voice breaks. Instead, you cry. Not loud, not dramatic, just slow, steady tears that fall without resistance. Your sword is gone. Only tears remain. Ananias helps you stand. His grip is firm. You lean into it, letting yourself be held for the first time in longer than you care to admit. He doesn't preach. He doesn't remind you who you were. He just stays. Later, you'll eat. Later, you'll be baptized. But for now, you just breathe. And thank God for the knock. The courtyard smells like bread and clay. You walk slowly, barefoot on sun-warmed stone, your tunic clinging to skin still raw from 3 days of silence. The sky overhead is soft and pale. No thunder, no signs, just quiet. Ananias walks beside you. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. His presence is steady, like something that won't flinch when you finally break. The basin is carved from old limestone, shallow but wide, tucked in the corner of a home where the shadows lean just far enough to cool the water. You glance at it and feel your breath hitch. It's not fear. It's not even hesitation. It's recognition. Like you're standing in front of a door you've been circling your whole life. You step in. The water is cold. It rushes over your ankles and curls around your knees as you lower yourself, arms shaking, heart pounding like it's trying to write a new rhythm. Ananias takes your hands. You don't pull away. You let him hold the weight. He asks if you believe in Jesus, the Son of God. You don't answer with words. You just nod. He lowers you. The water swallows you in one smooth motion, and for a moment, everything is still. The cold wraps around your face. Your eyes shut. Your ears fill. No voices, no scrolls, no accusations. Just silence and surrender. You go under as Saul the Zealot, the one who memorized fire, the one who tore through homes with letters in hand, the one who thought God could be defended by violence. And you rise. The air is different when you break the surface. Not cleaner, not louder, just alive. You gasp, and the sound feels like birth. The water runs down your face like oil. The world looks the same, but your skin doesn't feel like armor anymore. It feels like invitation. You step out, and the sun touches your shoulders like a father's hand. You don't rush to speak. You don't quote anything. You let yourself stand there, dripping and new, like a scroll not yet unrolled. There is a name inside you now. It hasn't been said out loud yet. Not by others, not even by you, but you feel it burning behind your ribs, soft and persistent. Not Saul, not the name that made people fear you. The new name is smaller, quieter. Not a title, a posture. Paul. You don't know how you'll explain this to the men who followed you here. You don't know how the priests will react. You don't know where you'll go next. But for the first time in your life, you're not planning. You're listening. The breeze moves through the trees like a whisper, and you imagine that if you could hear it clearly, it would say, "Welcome back." You smile. And this time, it doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like worship. The door creaks as you step inside. The synagogue is smaller than you remember, or maybe you're just seeing it with new eyes. The same stone walls, the same benches, the same carved ark at the front. You had planned to enter with scrolls and fury, with names and accusations and letters that gave you power. You were going to call out blasphemers, bind them, and drag them away. But now your hands are empty, and your chest is full of something you don't know how to name. Some of the faces turn when you enter. A few recognize you. You see it in their posture, the way their spines stiffen, the way their eyes narrow. No one says your name. Not yet. You feel the weight of your own history pressing against the threshold, but you step forward anyway. You wait for the reading to end. You rise when the floor is offered. No one stops you, not because they trust you, but because they're curious what shape your war will take now. Your voice is quieter than you expected. You begin with scripture. Isaiah, mostly. Psalms. Nothing strange. You quote what they know, what you know. You've lived in these words your whole life. You still do. But something trembles beneath them now, like the pages have been torn open from the inside and rewoven with fire. And then you say it. Jesus is the Son of God. It hangs in the air like smoke. No one breathes. You feel the words leave your mouth before your mind finishes catching up. They don't feel like yours. Not completely. They feel like a door was opened and something holy pushed through. Not forced. Just undeniable. You hear yourself say it again, this time louder, clearer. Jesus is the Son of God. Someone scoffs. Someone else stands. There's murmuring now, low and confused, the beginning of a storm. You don't flinch. You feel the Spirit press behind your ribs, steadying you, lifting your words like wind under wings. You speak of what happened on the road, of the light, of the voice, of the blindness and the waiting and the hand that called you brother. You don't embellish. You don't perform. You testify. The fire that once sharpened your arguments now burns with a different heat, not destruction, illumination. You speak of mercy like a man who didn't believe in it until it knocked on his door and called him by name. Jesus is the fulfillment, the thread that ties Abraham to David to now, the suffering servant, the risen king. You say it again. Jesus is the Son of God. It doesn't feel like betrayal anymore. It feels like release. Some begin to argue. They quote law. They challenge your reading. They accuse you of madness. You don't answer with fury. You don't strike back. You listen. You reply. Not to win, but to witness. You leave the synagogue shaken, not by doubt, but by awe. The words are still echoing in your chest, still trembling on your tongue. You don't know what they'll say about you. You don't know what the high priest will do when he hears. You don't know how long before the hunters become the hunted. But you know this. You said it out loud, and you will say it again. At first it's just silence. Not the quiet kind, but the kind that thickens around you like smoke. The kind you can feel behind your back in narrow alleys. You walk through Damascus with a name that used to open doors, used to draw nods and deference, but now draws eyes that don't blink and mouths that don't smile. You hear your old name whispered from corners, not with honor, with warning. The synagogue no longer invites you to speak. The elders who once praised your zeal avoid your gaze. A vendor who used to press figs into your hands won't meet you on the street. You pass his stall and hear him mutter a prayer under his breath, one meant to keep demons away. You laugh, but only once, and only because it hurts. Then come the questions. Who gave him authority? What happened on the road? Who is this man who was hunting us and now says he's one of us? You don't have answers that fit neatly. You speak the truth. You repeat the story. The light, the voice, the silence. You tell them you were blind, and now you see. Some believe you, most don't. Then come the threats. You catch them in conversations that stop when you enter. In the side glances exchanged at fountains. In the sudden quiet that settles when your footsteps echo near a doorway. You hear your name mixed with phrases like danger to the law and enemy of the temple. You recognize the tone. You used to use it yourself. You don't sleep much anymore. You wake to sounds that aren't there. Footsteps that vanish when you move. A flash of metal in the moonlight that turns out to be nothing, but still makes your breath freeze. You remember what it felt like to hold the warrant, to plan the ambush, to knock in the dark and drag a soul from their prayers. You know how these men think. You know because you trained them. One night, a believer knocks quietly. He doesn't say his name. He doesn't need to. He slips into the room like wind and speaks in a whisper you have to lean in to hear. They're watching the gates. You nod. They want to kill you before Sabbath. You don't ask who. You already know. The plan comes quickly. A wall. A basket. A rope. You don't argue. You don't suggest another way. You simply nod and begin to gather your things, which are few. A cloak, a scrap of bread, the tunic you were baptized in. You think about the letters you once carried into this city, the authority they held, the fire they gave you. You walk through the dark without sound. You follow the believers, those you once hunted. They move like shadows. You trust them without asking why. You feel their hands on your back, guiding, steadying, not afraid of what you used to be. When you reach the wall, the basket waits. It's a fishing basket, worn, smells of salt and rope. You step in without ceremony. Your knees pull to your chest. Your hands grip the edge. You do not speak. You do not pray. The rope creaks above you as they lower you down the outside of the city. The stone passes slowly in front of your face. You watch it like scripture. When your feet hit the earth, it's softer than you expect. You don't look back. The city you came to conquer now wants you dead. And the only reason you're still breathing is because the ones you once called heretics chose to carry you instead. The night is thick with silence, the kind that presses against your skin and settles in your throat. You stand near the city wall, eyes upturned toward the section of stone where rope dangles like a vine. The believers move quietly around you. No one speaks. Their faces are half hidden by the dark, but you can feel their eyes. Some are kind, some are wary. All of them are helping. The basket creaks as they adjust its weight. It's the kind used to haul fish or grain, not people. You step toward it slowly, like it might reject you. Your legs feel too long, your chest too wide. There's no dignity in it, no ceremony, just a hollow space and a fraying rope. You climb in anyway. You fold your limbs, knees tight to your ribs. Your shoulders scrape against the wicker sides. It sways under your weight, and you grab the edge without thinking. The rope jerks. You flinch. One of them whispers, "Steady," and they begin to lower you. It's not fast. The descent takes time. The wall passes in front of your eyes, inch by inch, rough and pitted, marked by years and weather and hands. You keep your gaze fixed on it. You count the cracks. You watch the mortar. You don't look down. You don't pray. Not yet. You just hold the sides of the basket and breathe. You came to this city with letters of power in your hands. You came with soldiers, with fire, with the full weight of the Sanhedrin behind you. You were feared. You were certain. You were the one who made others run. Now you're being lowered like contraband, like something stolen, like a child too weak to climb. The ropes groan above you. You don't cry. You don't scream. You just grip tighter. The wind picks up near the base of the wall, and for a moment, you imagine what it would feel like if the rope slipped, if the hands above let go, if this basket hit the ground hard and left you broken in the dust. You don't know if that would be mercy or punishment, but the rope holds. You reach the bottom. Someone is there, waiting. You don't know his name. He offers a hand. You take it. Your legs shake as you step out, and for a second, the world tilts. The basket creaks behind you, still swaying slightly, as if unsure whether to rise or fall. You look back. Just once. Up toward the top of the wall. They're gone now. No faces watching. No voices calling out. Just stone and sky. The city disappears behind you as you walk into the night. No plan, no map. Just footsteps and dust. You don't know where you'll sleep. You don't know who will take you in. You only know what you left behind. The hunter is gone, and now you're the hunted. You thought transformation would feel like triumph, but tonight, it feels like retreat. You were Saul the Zealot, Saul the Defender, Saul the voice that silenced rooms. Now you are just a man in a borrowed cloak, fleeing under cover of dark. And the only sound that follows you is the memory of rope burning in your palms. The gates of Jerusalem rise ahead of you like a memory that's soured. The same worn stones, the same dust-covered steps. You recognize the rhythm of the market, the scent of fig leaves and ash, the way the air thickens just before sunset, but none of it welcomes you. The city doesn't greet you as a son returning. It watches you like a stranger, arriving late and uninvited. You walk slower than you used to. No scrolls in your hand, no fire in your voice, just the sound of your sandals against stone and a heart still not sure how to beat at the new rhythm. The streets twist in ways your feet remember, but now every turn feels unfamiliar. Every familiar doorway is closed. Faces pass without recognition. The ones who do remember you look away. You came here thinking maybe they would understand. Maybe the ones you once fought beside would look into your eyes and see the change. Maybe the believers would hear your story and welcome you as a brother. You thought honesty would be enough. It isn't. The temple leaders no longer nod when you pass. The elders who once recited your words now pause when your name is mentioned. Some look at you like a traitor, some like a ghost, none like a friend. You try to explain. You try to tell the story as plainly as you can. What happened on the road? What you heard? What changed? But the words don't land. They hover. They're met with silence or suspicion. You hear them say you're a trick, a spy, a trap sent to root out the early church from the inside. And you can't blame them, because you wouldn't have trusted you either. You knock on doors that don't open. You wait in courtyards where no one comes. You visit the house where the believers are said to gather, and they bar the gate when they see your face. You call out, gently, not demanding, not commanding, but no answer comes. You don't raise your voice. You've done that before. You know how it sounds. You sit by a well until the sun drops behind the walls. You don't weep, but the silence feels heavier than grief. You wonder what it means to be changed and still not accepted. You wonder if transformation counts when no one sees it but you. Even your own thoughts are uncertain. You pray at night, but your words are slower. You ask questions instead of making vows. You wonder if this is what it means to carry a cross, that it doesn't just break you, it makes others doubt the pieces that are left. You walk the temple steps again one morning, just to see if they feel the same. They don't. They echo. Once, your presence made people stand aside. Now, they simply step around you. The man you were is still alive in their memories. The man you are is invisible. You sit in the shadow of the city that once honored you, and you realize something you hadn't before. You don't miss the power. You miss being known. But the path you walk now doesn't offer applause. Only surrender, only time, and somewhere, beneath the ache of rejection, that begins to feel like enough. You don't see him at first. You're sitting on the edge of the square, eyes on the ground, too tired to hope, too proud to beg. Another day in Jerusalem, another silence, another round of sidelong glances and whispered warnings passed just loud enough for you to hear. You've stopped correcting them. You've stopped trying to explain. The story of your fall has already spread faster than the story of your change. You wear both like garments. No one will touch. Then a voice says your name, not with suspicion, not like an accusation, just a name, said plainly, like it still belongs to you. You look up and see a man standing in front of you. His face is weathered, eyes warm but steady, posture relaxed like he isn't afraid of what you might do. He doesn't ask if the rumors are true. He doesn't ask what you want. He asks if you've eaten. You don't answer right away. You're not sure how to. You nod instead, and he sits beside you, pulling bread from a satchel and tearing it in half. You take it with hands that still don't feel like yours. You eat in silence. After a while, he speaks. He asks what happened on the road. You tell him, not because you expect belief, but because something in his gaze invites the truth. You don't perform. You don't dramatize. You speak plainly, carefully, like a man handing over a fragile object with both hands. You tell him about the light, the voice, the blindness, the basket, the wall, the weight. When you finish, he doesn't lean away. He leans in. He says his name is Barnabas, son of encouragement. You try not to laugh at how much you needed someone with that name. He says he believes you, just like that. No tests, no traps, no riddles disguised as theology, just belief. He says the Spirit is not just wind and flame, but discernment, and he sees it in you. You feel something loosen in your chest. He takes you to the other believers himself. He walks beside you through the streets that once swallowed you whole. He knocks on the doors you stopped knocking on. He says your name before you can. He tells them the truth before the fear can speak first. You watch eyes shift. Not all at once, not with ease, but with less tension, less threat. He stands in the doorway and tells the apostles your story while you stand behind him. You expect to be examined, cross-examined, weighed, but instead, they ask you to sit, and you do. For the first time in weeks, you sit without suspicion curling around your shoulders like smoke. You sit as someone invited, not interrogated. You aren't embraced by all. But you're not alone anymore. When the evening comes, Barnabas places a hand on your shoulder and says you did well, that you were right to wait, that even the early church had to learn grace. You lie awake that night in a borrowed room, the walls plain, the mat stiff, but your chest quiet. You replay his voice again and again, the way he said your name, the way he didn't flinch. You don't know what comes next, but now you know who you'll walk with. And that somehow feels like enough. Tarsus greets you with the same river, the same heat, the same voices calling out over baskets of fish and dyed wool. But nothing feels the same. The city hasn't changed. You have. You walk its streets like a ghost, retracing the steps of a boy who once believed knowledge could save the world. The house you grew up in is still there, but your father's chair sits empty. You don't ask what happened. You don't want the details. You already know the distance was never measured in miles. You move into a small room above a shop where the roof leaks during early rain. It doesn't matter. You're not here for comfort. You're here because Jerusalem wasn't ready, because your words outpaced your welcome. Because sometimes the Spirit says, go, and other times it says, wait. This is the waiting. You wake with the sun and tie thread between your fingers. Tent making isn't glorious. It's slow, stiff work. You bend, stretch, measure, cut. Your hands blister again. Your back stiffens. The leather resists until it doesn't. You learn the rhythm of your new life one stitch at a time. Not with sermons, not with letters, just silence and skin and thread. The scrolls are still with you, stacked in the corner. You reach for them less now. Not because you love them less, but because you've learned not to treat them like a weapon. You read slowly, line by line. Sometimes you stop and sit with a verse for an hour just breathing. Sometimes you don't make it past a single word. You think about Jesus more now, not just the voice on the road, but the hands that broke bread, the parables, the silences. You wonder what it would have been like to walk beside him in Galilee, to see him laugh, to hear him speak without thunder. You wonder how many times he passed someone like you, ambitious, rigid, blind, and still called them anyway. The synagogue in Tarsus remembers you, but barely. You attend quietly. You speak when asked. You offer no arguments, no challenges. You are not the sharp student anymore. You are the man who came back different. You don't correct people when they mispronounce your name. You let it go. You're not here to win. You see the world through a new lens now. You watch merchants forgive debts. You see mothers gather orphaned children. You see Roman guards show mercy and Jewish elders harden their hearts. You stop assuming you know where God will show up. At night, you lie awake and listen to the city breathe. You count the hours by the sounds of carts and dogs and laughter from neighboring rooftops. You don't count the years. That would break you. You just live the day in front of you and let God hold the calendar. Sometimes you wonder if he's forgotten you. You thought the calling would feel louder, that the Spirit would roar like it did on the road, but here in the quiet it whispers, not in commands, in presence. It's enough, not always, but often enough. Years pass like this. You don't keep track of them, but your beard is fuller, your hands are rougher, your voice lower. You speak less, but when you do, people listen, not because you're forceful, but because there's peace behind your eyes that wasn't there before. You don't know what's coming. You only know you'll say yes when it does. It starts with a whisper, not a sermon, not a vision, just someone asking, quietly, over shared bread at dusk, is it true? You pause. You could lie, or laugh, or change the subject, but you don't. You just say, yes, and wait for the silence that always follows. Word spreads slowly, not like before, when your name crackled through the temple like fire. This time it moves in corners, in markets, in narrow alleys between tents and baskets of grain. A woman tells her cousin. A merchant tells a friend. A scribe with ink-stained fingers watches you from across the street and doesn't look away. You're invited to a home near the edge of the river. 6 people, a small table, a cracked oil lamp that flickers when you speak. They expect you to thunder. They expect the man who once overturned heresy with a glance. Instead, you tell them the story. Just the story. The road, the light, the voice that called your name and didn't curse you. You don't argue. You don't push. Some listen with folded arms and narrowed eyes. One walks out before you finish, but 2 stay after, asking questions. Real ones. You answer the best you can, not like a scholar, but like a man still tasting grace. You don't try to impress. You just tell the truth. A week later, you're asked to speak at a small synagogue on the far side of town. They don't give you the pulpit, just a place to stand near the back. You quote Isaiah. You talk about mercy. You mention Jesus. The room freezes. A few eyes widen. One man mutters under his breath and walks out, but no one throws you out. You call that a win. You go where you're asked. Never twice in the same place too soon. The city isn't hostile, but it's watchful. There are still those who remember the old Saul, and those who have no interest in the new one. You learn to move quietly, to speak plainly, to love them either way. Sometimes you preach to 5, sometimes 2, once just 1. A boy no older than you were when you memorized Leviticus. He sits in front of you with legs crossed and eyes wide, and when you say Jesus, he doesn't flinch. He just nods. You don't know what he understands, but you pray for him anyway. You're not famous anymore. You're not feared. You are no longer the man who stood at the gates of Damascus with fire in his hands and rage in his chest. Now you carry water. Now you carry stories. Now you carry peace. There are nights when no one comes. When you walk home in silence with your breath fogging in the cool air and your sandals worn thin, you wonder if it matters, if you're making any difference at all. But you keep going, because something deeper than ambition drives you now. Not recognition, just obedience, just faith. You lie awake some nights and whisper the words again. Jesus is the Son of God, not to convince others, but to remind yourself. And every time you say it, it settles a little deeper, into your bones, into your breath, into your yes. You are not changing cities. You are not gathering crowds, but you are planting seeds. And even if you never see the harvest, you've already seen the light. The days blur together. You wake before the sun, stretch aching limbs, and start the thread work without speaking. You cut leather, bend your back, stitch slowly, and keep your mind quiet. The smell of oiled fabric clings to your skin like memory. No voice from heaven, no burst of light, just another day, then another, and another after that. God says nothing. You eat alone more often than not. You stop waiting for someone to invite you. You stop waiting for the letters. You thought, once, that calling looked like fire and movement. That being chosen meant urgency and action and divine intervention. But now, it looks like repetition, like silence, like dust settling on your sandals as the years slip past without ceremony. No one writes about this part. Not the Gospels, not the scrolls, not the men who later call you apostle. They don't mention the mornings where your prayers feel like talking to stone, the nights where you replay Damascus in your mind like a song you're afraid to forget. You kneel, you wait, nothing answers. So you keep working. The sword has rusted. You were once sharp, once feared, once chased down alleys with letters in hand and law in your lungs. Now, you just try not to ruin the seams of the tent you're building. You wonder if this is still part of the mission or if the mission ended and no one told you. But you don't stop. You keep showing up to the mat. You keep smoothing creases with calloused palms. You keep loving people quietly, even when you're not sure they notice. Your heart has softened, not all at once, but slowly, in the way you listen now instead of correct, in the way you wait when someone struggles to speak instead of filling the silence, in the way you forgive people who don't even know they hurt you. There is no applause for this. No scrolls written about how you learn to sit instead of speak. But it's the truest work you've ever done. You hear stories from afar, about the church growing, about persecution rising, about miracles and martyrdom and power. Sometimes you ache to be there, to help, to lead. Sometimes you wonder if God misplaced you, if you're stuck in the wrong story. But the answer never comes. Just another day, another stitch. You are not wasted. You are being aged like wine. But aging hurts. There are days you feel like a stone buried in a field, waiting for the hand that will one day lift you into light again. You remind yourself that resurrection takes time, that Jesus waited too. 30 years of quiet for 3 of purpose. You tell yourself the silence is not abandonment. It's preparation. Still, you are human. Still, you wonder. Still, you ache. But you endure. You look in the mirror one morning and barely recognize the man staring back. The beard is streaked with gray. The fire is still there, but it's a slow burn now, not a blaze. And behind your eyes, there's something softer than certainty. There is peace. And peace was always the point. It's late afternoon when the knock comes. You're bent over the frame of a half-finished tent, fingers aching, thread slack between your thumb and palm. You almost don't hear it over the scraping of wind and the slow creak of wood. You wait, thinking it might pass. But it comes again, firm, patient, familiar. You open the door, and there he is, Barnabas, a little older, a little more worn around the eyes, but still steady, still carrying that quiet kind of joy that doesn't flinch under weight. He says your name like no time has passed, like you didn't disappear into years of dust and silence. You feel something crack open in your chest before he even speaks. He smiles, then says the words that change everything. Antioch. You don't respond right away. You step aside and let him in, clearing the bench where your tools rest. He doesn't sit. He stands with hands clasped and eyes searching your face. He tells you the Gentiles are listening, that the Spirit is moving, that the message has leapt the walls of Jerusalem and is now pulsing in a city full of seekers. He says your name again, softly this time, and says, "We need you." You sit, not from weariness, but from the weight of it. You had almost stopped hoping. You'd trained yourself to be content with the silence, to live inside the stillness without clawing at it. You'd buried the urgency, learned to breathe in the waiting, told yourself that calling didn't always look like movement. But now here he is, calling you back into the story. And the flame that once nearly destroyed you stirs again, but gentler now, tempered by years. You ask questions. You want to be sure. Barnabas just laughs. "I wouldn't have come if I wasn't." He stays the night. You share bread, and this time the silence between bites is full of anticipation, not loneliness. He tells you stories. How the Greeks in Antioch are asking about Jesus, how they're hungry for truth, how the Spirit is doing something no one expected. You listen with your whole body. You try to stay calm, but your hands tremble around the cup. Something long dormant is rising. The next morning, you pack. Not much, just a few scrolls, your cloak, the worn sandals you've mended more times than you can count. The tent work can wait. You leave it half-stitched on the table, leather curling at the corners like a memory. You don't look back. You walk beside Barnabas as the sun crests over Tarsus, the city still yawning into morning. The streets smell like bread and smoke. No one stops you. No one calls your name. You're not Saul the Zealot anymore. You're something else now. Something you still don't know how to name. But you know this. You are ready. The silence wasn't wasted. The waiting wasn't punishment. Every quiet day shaped you. Every unnoticed prayer thickened your roots. Now the wind has returned, and your feet know how to move again. The path ahead is not clear, but the next step is, so you take it. And the road begins again. They sit on dirt floors with olive-stained fingers and eyes wide like children. Some are merchants, still smelling of spice and ship tar. Others are women with questions sharp as flint. A few are slaves, who shouldn't even be here. But they are, and they listen. They don't know the stories. They've never heard of Abraham. They don't flinch when you say the name Yahweh. They don't carry the weight of Sinai or the ache of exile. They don't have scrolls memorized or Sabbath rhythms burned into their bones. They only know what you tell them. And still, they believe. It startles you. You speak of Jesus, and they weep. You describe the cross, and they bow their heads. You whisper resurrection, and they smile like it's something they already knew deep in their chests. You try to teach carefully, methodically, beginning with creation and tracing the line through the prophets. But sometimes, before you finish, they've already said yes. They don't ask for proof. They just trust. And in their trust, you see something you missed all those years. Something you were too proud, too precise, too hardened to receive. Grace. Not as a theory, not as a doctrine, but as a river wide enough for Gentiles and Pharisees alike. You thought they would need convincing, thought you'd have to argue them into the kingdom. Instead, they welcome it, like a feast, like water in a dry land. You feel clumsy sometimes. Your Hebrew metaphors collapse under Greek logic. Your references don't land. You mention the tabernacle and they blink. You say circumcision and someone laughs, but they lean in anyway. They ask about Jesus, about his hands, his laugh, his kindness. They want to know if he ever got tired, if he danced, if he liked figs. And so you tell them, not just what you memorized, but what you've come to know. You speak not as the man who hunted his followers, but as the man who met him. You teach what you've seen in dreams, what you've heard in the silence of exile, what you felt in your bones when everything else went quiet. Sometimes you pause mid-sentence and just watch them. These people with no heritage of covenant, no promises whispered over their cradles, no bloodline pointing back to David, and yet they burn. You see the Spirit fall on a fisherman who can't read, on a widow who still wears the ashes of grief, on a Roman who once mocked Jewish prayers. And you remember the veil that tore. You remember that this was always the plan. You are not building synagogues anymore. You are building a new kind of temple, not of stone, of people. And they're learning how to carry him, without rituals, without lineage, just faith. Some days you sit alone afterward, stunned by how quickly it's happening. You remember how long it took you to say Jesus is Lord without gritting your teeth. And now, here they are, weeks old in the faith, already calling him Savior, already loving each other like family. You thought you'd be their teacher, but often they're the ones teaching you, not with words, with wonder, with joy, with an eagerness that melts your edges. You once thought your knowledge was the key, but here, in Antioch, you are learning something better. Love opens faster than law. It begins with fasting, not a vision, not thunder, not flame, just empty stomachs and longing hearts. The church in Antioch gathers, tired farmers, former idol makers, women with calloused hands, boys who whisper psalms between chores. You all kneel, you all wait. There's no rush, just a hunger to hear, to know, to obey. You've learned by now that obedience is rarely glamorous. Sometimes it looks like silence, sometimes like obscurity, but today it comes like fire. Not on your skin, in your spirit. The room grows still, and then someone speaks. Not from their own mind, not with their own tone, The Spirit speaks through lips you've grown used to hearing in laughter and ordinary questions. But now the voice is different, deeper, unshakable. Set apart Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them. No one moves. No one questions. They just keep praying because they know what this is. The same Spirit that fell on Gentiles, the same Spirit that found you on the road, the same Spirit now says, go. You don't flinch, but your heart clenches anyway. You look at Barnabas, and he's already looking at you. You both nod. You've walked this far together. You'll walk farther still. You stay another night. You eat bread with trembling hands. You try to sleep, but your mind won't slow. You remember the first go, the road to Damascus that unmade you. And now, here comes another one, wider, harder. You don't know where it ends. That's not your concern anymore. You've stopped needing blueprints. The morning is sharp, with clarity. They lay hands on you. They speak blessings over your life, with voices thick from tears. These people who once doubted you, these people you once feared, they call you brother. They send you out not in fear, but with faith that the same God who found you will now go before you. You carry little, just a few supplies, and everything you've become. The world waits beyond the coast. Cities filled with strangers, markets thick with gods you don't recognize, ports where truth has never been spoken. You step toward it all. Not with a sword, not with a scroll, but with a name burning in your chest that still hasn't lost its heat. Jesus. You speak it under your breath as you walk. You speak it in your sleep. You speak it over waves, through customs, across borders, into places that do not want you. This is not a new mission. It's the same one that started in a garden and ran through a manger and exploded from an empty tomb. But now you carry it on feet, scarred by the old path, led by a Spirit that does not explain himself. You are not seeking glory. You are seeking obedience. And obedience always costs something. But this time you're ready. The fire did not fade in Tarsus. It deepened. And now, with ash still on your shoulders and calluses on your hands, you step into the unknown again. Not because it's easy, because it's right. The sun beats down on Cyprus like judgment. The air is heavy with salt and incense, the streets loud with traders and whispers. You walk beside Barnabas, sandals powdered with dust, the sea stretching behind you, the city pressing ahead. The synagogue gave you welcome. Now the palace calls. They say the Roman governor is curious, that he listens, that he wants to hear about this Jesus. But as you enter his chambers, you feel it. Resistance. Not from Sergius Paulus himself, from the man beside him. Bar Jesus. A sorcerer, a counterfeit. He calls himself Elymas now, as if renaming himself gives him more power. His robe is rich, but his eyes are restless. He stands too close to the governor, like a shadow with a voice. His smile is thin, his words even thinner. He tries to twist everything you say before it lands. He says Jesus is a myth, that resurrection is a lie, that power belongs to Rome, and to men who know how to summon it. You don't shout. You don't argue. You just stare at him, and something old stirs inside you. Not hatred, not rage, something colder. Recognition. You know this man. Not his name, not his past, but his spirit. You've worn it before. You've spoken with his same contempt. You've twisted truth with the same lips. You remember who you were before light knocked you to the ground. And suddenly, you are not speaking to Elymas. You are speaking to your former self. And so, your voice doesn't rise, but it cuts. You are a child of the devil, you say, an enemy of everything good. When will you stop twisting the straight paths of the Lord? He flinches. The room stills, and then it happens. You don't plan it. You don't control it. The Spirit moves through your words like a storm wrapped in silence. You will be blind for a time, you say, unable to see the light of the sun. He laughs at first. Then his hand twitches. Then his eyes shift. He blinks fast, then faster, then panics. Darkness. He stumbles, grabs for something that isn't there, calls out like a drowning man, and no one helps him. The governor's face changes, not with fear, with awe. His eyes flick between you and the trembling figure on the ground, then back to you. He doesn't ask questions. He just believes. Not because a man went blind, but because he saw something stronger than magic, something truer than spectacle. He saw authority, not yours, God's. And you feel nothing but sorrow. You watch Elymas fumble and stagger into the very blindness that once wrecked you. You want to grab him, hold him, whisper that even this can become mercy. That blindness can break open light. But he flees before you can, and the governor kneels, and the word spreads, and Cyprus is no longer the same. They say your name differently now. Roman mouths curve it smoother. Gentile tongues don't stumble when they say it. Paul. It rolls off lips like dust shaken from sandals. You hear it in the streets of Pisidia, in the prayers of the Antioch church, in the letters that have begun to form in your head before your hand ever moves. It fits, in a way Saul never did. Saul was the name of a king. Tall, proud, armored with zeal and dripping with tradition. A name sharpened by law and heavy with blood. Saul stood in synagogues and memorized every flame-shaped letter of the Torah. Saul gave orders. Saul watched Stephen die. Saul kicked against the goads. Saul believed he was righteous. But Paul? Paul is a servant. Paul carries no sword. Paul travels with calloused feet and a cloak patched by storms. Paul listens more than he speaks. And when he speaks, it's not with certainty. It's with fire born from mercy. The name is smaller, lighter, almost forgettable. That's the point. You don't remember exactly when you stopped correcting people. Maybe it was in the governor's court. Maybe in the shadow of a ship's sail. Maybe after a sermon that left you weeping in your tent. But one day, someone called you Paul, and you didn't flinch. You turned your head and said, "Here," because the old name couldn't follow you into this new life. It carried too much death. Every time someone whispered, "Saul," you heard it. The chains, the cries, the name scratched into arrest warrants, the echo of your own voice, loud and cruel in temple courts. Saul hunted. Saul hurt. Saul believed he was protecting God. And then God found him, and unmade him, and renamed him. You didn't see it coming. You thought redemption would make you stronger. But it made you smaller. It made you Paul, the small one, the sent one. You've learned that grace doesn't decorate the proud. It rebuilds the broken. You used to pray with lifted eyes and clenched fists. Now you kneel low. You fast often. You confess more than you argue. You don't need titles. You don't seek applause. You carry the scars of cities that tried to stone you, and you count them as marks of belonging. Paul isn't who you were, but it's who you've become. You speak the name aloud when you introduce yourself to strangers. You sign it on the letters you begin to write. You hear it in the prayers of Gentiles who thank God for your message. You carry it like a quiet badge, a reminder that nothing is wasted, not even your past, not even Saul, because Saul died on that road. But Paul got up, blind, trembling, forgiven. And now, everywhere you go, every time your feet touch a new city, every time you walk into a synagogue, a marketplace, a prison cell, you whisper it again, not to be heard, not to be honored, just to remember. Paul, the harbor smells of salt and wood, and the sweat of men who do not care about gods. Ships creak under the weight of grain. linen, rumor. You stand on the dock with the wind in your beard and the weight of call in your chest. Barnabas waits beside you. Behind you, Antioch fades into the shimmer of heat. Ahead of you, the world groans, aching for truth, blind to its own thirst. You were never meant to stay still. You were made to move. You've packed light, a cloak, a few scrolls, the memory of mercy. You carry no sword, only a name, a story, a voice that once shattered you and now sings through you. The men around you hoist ropes and shout instructions. You just pray. Not with eloquence, with need. You don't ask for comfort. You ask for boldness, because you know what's coming. You've read the prophets. You've seen what happens to truth tellers. You've watched stones rise in fists and blood dry in the corners of mouths. You know that obedience will cost everything. And still, you step forward. You are no longer Saul the hunter. You are no longer even Paul the preacher. You are something smaller and something braver. A man sent. A man willing. You walk up the ramp onto the ship, the boards groaning under your sandals. You don't look back. Not because you're strong, because you've been broken enough to know where strength lives now. Not in power. In surrender. The wind shifts. The sails rise. The shoreline slips away, and with it, everything you once thought mattered. You don't miss the safety. You don't mourn the certainty. You feel the swell of the sea under your feet and think of the one who walked on water. The one who walked toward you when you deserved nothing but distance. You remember the light. You remember the question, why do you persecute me? You remember the silence that followed, the dark days, the scales that fell. You remember grace like thunder in your bones. And now, every step is a thank you. Every breath is a yes. You will walk into cities that spit you out. You will speak to kings who laugh in your face. You will raise the dead. You will be beaten within an inch of your life. You will sing from prison. You will write from chains. You will fall asleep on floors and wake up with fire in your ribs. And you will keep going, because the story isn't yours to end. It belongs to the one who met you in the dust and called you by name. So you go, not for fame, not for fear, for love, for light. And even if your legs give out, your voice will not. Even if your body breaks, your hope won't, because you have seen him. And once you've seen the light, you never stop walking toward it.